What I'm trying to say is. What I'm trying to say is. What I mean is. What I mean is. The point is. The point is. The reason is that. The reason is that. This is because. This is because. This means that. This means that. In other words. In other words. For example. For example. On the other hand. On the other hand. Compared with. Compared with. As a result. As a result. Therefore. Therefore. It depends on. It depends on. I'm not sure if. I'm not sure if. Let me clarify that point. Let me clarify that point. Let me move on to. Let me move on to. As you can see here. As you can see here. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your question. If I understand your question correctly. If I understand your question correctly. Could you please clarify? Could you please clarify? What I'm trying to say is. What I'm trying to say is. What I'm trying to do is. What I'm trying to do is. What I'm trying to show is. What I'm trying to show is. What I'm trying to explain is. What I'm trying to explain is. What this means is. What this means is. The key point is. The key point is. The main idea is. The main idea is. The basic idea is. The basic idea is. The question is. The question is. The problem is that. The problem is that. The reason is that. The reason is that. The thing is. The thing is. The way I see it is. The way I see it is. What matters is. What matters is. What matters here is. What matters here is. The important thing is. The important thing is. I think. I think. I guess. I guess. I suppose. I suppose. I would say. I would say. I feel like. I feel like. It seems that. It seems that. It looks like. It looks like. It sounds like. It sounds like. It appears that. It appears that. My impression is that. My impression is that. My understanding is that. My understanding is that. From my perspective. From my perspective. In my view. In my view. As far as I can tell. As far as I can tell. I tend to think that. I tend to think that. This is because. This is because. That is because. That is because. One reason is that. One reason is that. The main reason is that. The main reason is that. Another reason is that. Another reason is that. This may be because. This may be because. This is mainly due to. This is mainly due to. This may be due to. This may be due to. This can be explained by. This can be explained by. This comes from. This comes from. This has to do with. This has to do with. The cause of this is. The cause of this is. This happens because. This happens because. That is why. That is why. As a result. As a result. As a consequence. As a consequence. Therefore. Therefore. Thus. Thus. This means that. This means that. This suggests that. This suggests that. This indicates that. This indicates that. This leads to. This leads to. This results in. This results in. This makes it possible to. This makes it possible to. This allows us to. This allows us to. This enables us to. This enables us to. The conclusion is that. The conclusion is that. We can conclude that. We can conclude that. On the other hand. On the other hand. In contrast. In contrast. By contrast. By contrast. Compared with. Compared with. Compared to. Compared to. In comparison with. In comparison with. Unlike. Unlike. This is different from. This is different from. This is similar to. This is similar to. The difference is that. The difference is that. The similarity is that. The similarity is that. A is more than B. A is more than B. A is less than B. A is less than B. While A, B. While A, B. Whereas A, B. Whereas A, B. At the same time. At the same time. For example. For example. For instance. For instance. Such as. Such as. Like. Like. In other words. In other words. That is. That is. To put it simply. To put it simply. Put simply. Put simply. More specifically. More specifically. To be more specific. To be more specific. What I mean by X is. What I mean by X is. Let me put it another way. Let me put it another way. A good example is. A good example is. Typical example is. A typical example is. First. First. First of all. First of all, next, then, after that, before that, at this point, at the beginning, in the beginning, in the end, eventually, so far, from now on, going forward, at the same time, in the meantime, once, as soon as, let me start with, I'll start by, I'd like to start with, today, I'd like to talk about, the structure of my talk is, I'll first explain, then I'll move on to, finally, I'll summarize. Let me move on to, now, let's look at, before going into details, let me briefly explain, let me clarify one point, this brings me to the next point, let me summarize this part, to summarize, that's all for this part, thank you for your attention, this figure shows, this table summarizes, this graph shows, the horizontal axis shows, the vertical axis shows, the x-axis represents, the y-axis represents, the solid line indicates, the dashed line indicates, the symbols represent, each point corresponds to, the shaded area indicates, as you can see here, it can be seen that, the trend is clear, there is a clear trend, the value increases with, value decreases with, the difference becomes larger, the difference becomes smaller, Thank you for your question. That's a good question. That's an important point. Let me answer that in two parts. Let me clarify that point. If I understand your question correctly. What I meant was, I should have said, that is beyond the scope of this talk. This stage, I cannot say for sure. At this stage, I cannot say for sure. I don't have the data with me right now. I will need to check that. That is something I would like to examine further. Could you please repeat the question? Could you please rephrase the question? Could you clarify what you mean by? Does that answer your question? Can I ask a question? I have a quick question. Can I add something? Can I jump in here? I agree with that. I agree up to a point. I see your point. That makes sense. I'm not sure I agree. I have a slightly different view. Can we come back to that later? Let's focus on. Let's move on. Let's take a step back. The main issue is. The next step is. Who is responsible for? What is the deadline? Could you please? Would you be able to? Can you? Could I? Would it be possible to? Would it be possible to? I would like to. I would like to. I was wondering if. I was wondering if. Do you mind if I? Do you mind if I? Would you mind? Would you mind? Let's. Why don't we? Why don't we? How about? How about? It might be better to. It might be better to. I suggest that we. I suggest that we. I recommend. I recommend. Please let me know if. Please let me know if. I'm not sure if. I'm not sure if. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure. I cannot say for sure. I cannot say for sure. It depends on. It depends on. It is possible that. It is possible that. It is likely that. It is likely that. It is unlikely that. It is unlikely that. This may indicate that. This may indicate that. This seems to suggest that. This seems to suggest that. We need to be careful here. We need to be careful here. There are some limitations. There are some limitations. One limitation is that. One limitation is that. This point needs further investigation. This point needs further investigation. Further work is needed too. Further work is needed too. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are doing well. I am writing to. I am writing to. I am contacting you regarding. I am contacting you regarding. Thank you for your email. Thank you for your email. Thank you for your quick response. Thank you for your quick response. Sorry for the late reply. Sorry for the late reply. Please find attached. Please find attached. I have attached. I have attached. Could you please check? Could you please check? Please let me know your availability. Please let me know your availability. Please let me know if you have any questions. Please let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to hearing from you. Best regards. Best regards. I apologize for the inconvenience. I apologize for the inconvenience. Thank you for your understanding. Thank you for your understanding. How's it going? How's it going? What do you mean? What do you mean? You mean. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. That sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds reasonable. That sounds reasonable. That sounds difficult. That sounds difficult. I'm looking for. I'm looking for. I'm interested in. I'm interested in. I'm working on. I'm working on. I'm in charge of. I'm in charge of. I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to. I'm about to. I'm about to. I used to. I used to. I'm used to. I'm used to. It takes time to. It takes time to. It depends. It depends. No worries. No worries. That's fine. That's fine. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. What I'm trying to say is. What I'm trying to say is. What I mean is. What I mean is. What this means is. What this means is. The point is. The point is. The reason is. The reason is. This is because. This is because. It is important to. It is important to. I would like to. I would like to. I'm going to. I'm going to. We are going to. We are going to. Let me. Let me show you. Let me show you. As you can see. As you can see. In this case. In this case. On the other hand. On the other hand. At the same time. At the same time. In terms of. In terms of. Based on. Based on. Due to. Due to. A lot of. A lot of. Kind of. Kind of. Sort of. Sort of. Out of. Out of. One of the. One of the. Because of. Because of.